Hello, everyone, and welcome to Homeschool Success with Cami Wanda's podcast and Live with Cami. If you're watching us live today, I am super excited because today we're going to talk about dyslexia. And we have the most amazing, the most incredible rock star, Dr. Rebecca Troy, with us. She is such an expert on dyslexia and reading disabilities and things like that. You guys, seriously, so much information. I can't even tell you. I'm so excited for you guys to get to chat with her today. This is so amazing because I didn't even know. Okay, I was a high school English teacher for 7 years, and like I said, my husband teaches English. We've been in this for a while, and I had no idea how common dyslexia is. It is so common. My friend was going through the process of figuring out if her son had dyslexia, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, it's like 1 in 5 people." And I was like, "Really? Are you kidding me right now?" And that makes total sense because you could see how that kind of comes out, and I could see how maybe my son probably had it and has it a little bit too. But it was more like we were able to work through it. But it's so incredible. What a mind shift change, and how freeing it is to know that we have people like Rebecca out here who are doing amazing things and really putting tools out for us and strategies and information for people to better understand, because public school does not know how to deal with dyslexia and they don't even, it's not even a thing. And so I can tell you that from experience for sure. If we don't even know that it's there as English teachers, I'm telling you, it's pretty crazy. So I'm super excited. I seriously, Rebecca, when she and I talked the first time, we were just going back and forth. We had so much, we were just jamming. We think alike. It's so great. And I am excited for her to share with you not only a little bit of background, but also a little bit of strategies and like, hey, how do we like actually help them? Because it can be so frustrating for parents to say, like, okay, now we know that they have it or we think they do. And ooh, the mom guilt comes on, the like everything, then how do I help them? And there's so much of that. So Rebecca's going to give you all of those things. So Rebecca, can you please share with us a little bit about your background and how you got started studying dyslexia?
Absolutely. So I'm Dr. Rebecca Troy, as Cami said, and I am founder of a company called Retrain the Dyslexic Brain. And so one of the things that happened that was in common for both Cami and I is that we were English teachers in the classroom. And I think a lot of people assume that, especially on a team of teachers, as the English teacher, science, social studies, math, that if there was a problem with the child's reading ability, that the English teacher would be the one to resolve that. But the truth is that we never had, or I never had, any kind of formal training on reading or reading disabilities, on dyslexia. I mean, it like almost never ever came up. And so it was amazing to me. And I'm sure that you've all seen the statistics about how many fourth graders are at or above grade level. I think we've got 66% of the country right now that is below basic in their reading skills. And so the volume of students that come to the classroom without the basic skills to read was just really overwhelming. And so as a teacher unable to help and support, like I went back to get a master's degree and reading specialist degree, and I happened to be under a person who had done some of the first studies with EEGs and studying the brains of those with dyslexia and showing that, in fact, you can reorganize how the brain is hearing and responding to language. So that just absolutely sparked my interest times a million. And so I went on to do additional studies, and I've been working, doing that work now for about 20 years, and consequently started the company because we have all kinds of people all across the world that just don't have access to either high quality instruction or high quality reading or dyslexia support of any kind. So we're able to get into a lot of different areas of the country and the world to support a lot of kids.
Oh my gosh, I love that you talked about so first of all, I kinda geek out on that stuff too. So, like, retraining the brain to, like, read differently or whatever, that's totally fascinating. It's really cool. And just to know that you can
Mhm.
is such a freeing experience. Oh my gosh. And so it's so super common. It's something that we're all surrounded by for sure. So, how do we like if we think, our kids are struggling with reading, and I know if you guys go back and watch a video with I did with Dr. Deanna Wested, and it's on the podcast as well, that she talked about some of like what are the kind of identifying markers of what we want to see, as far as kids when they're reading on track per se, but we want to leave a lot of leeway. So how would we, if we think about how to identify dyslexia, or like if we're kind of like, "Oh, I don't know if it's my kid's actually behind or if there's some trouble." Like, what are some signs there?
Yeah, you got it. So you're just experiencing the power cord necessities for me, but we got all kinds of kid stuff all over. So how do you know if you have dyslexia is really going to come from a number of different factors. So there can be some signs even when you are 2 and 3 years old. So if your child has a difficulty in obtaining the letters of the alphabet, if they're struggling to rhyme with words, like, okay, kiddo, the word is cat. Can you give me a couple words that rhyme with cat? And we're saying things like dog, fish. Like it just means that there's a misfire in how the brain is actually hearing and responding to the language. So there can be those early signs, but then as the child progresses into school, you'd start to see a lot more of that misfire. So I think something that's just really important for people to know is that dyslexia is neurobiological in origin, which means that the brain is quite literally different for a child with dyslexia than a typical kid. So if two kids were sitting side by side, one of them had their eyes closed, actually both of them had their eyes closed, they'd look the same. But then you ask those same two kids to do a reading task, and what you'd notice in the kid with dyslexia is that this back part of the brain here in the occipital lobe where vision is controlled wouldn't have any activity. And this area here, the parietal temporal lobe over the ear, is going to have far less activity, which means that sight and sound are not responding the way a typical reader's brain would. So you can be trying to spell things and you're going to add in letters, and you might omit letters, or you're working really hard to decode the word cat. Like, wow, we really worked hard at that. At cat. Yep, we got it. Two lines later, you see the same word, and it's like amnesia. I've never seen that word before. It's like we're starting all over again. And so I think, one of the things that can be challenging, especially if you're a homeschool parent, is that you feel like that's you. Like somehow, it's me. Like I'm not doing a good job teaching this. It's me. And it's not you. It's that the child's brain is really struggling to hear and respond to the language. So it's kind of like Groundhog's Day every day because you continue to do these things that are just absolutely not sticking in the brain. So definitely traits early on that you can start to notice. um, but yeah, as the child progresses more in grades, it's more and more obvious.
Yeah, you know what? It's so funny. That's the thing that tipped my friend off the most about her son was that he would do fine for about 5 minutes or even the day's lesson, and then tomorrow it's like we just never even did anything.
That's exactly right.
And so
Which is so
it
hard.
it's so hard. She was getting so frustrated and she was like, "Okay, I'm gonna let him just be ready." But at a point at which it was like, "Okay." Like there is something we need to figure this out. And so she started researching. It was really amazing. So in terms of and don't forget that kids are also ready at different times. So
Sure.
you don't have to think that like, oh my gosh, they're not reading at 4 years old. I I I have a problem. It's like, no. Give a little more time, right? So when do you think like would be a good time for them to maybe start looking for just some maybe we need to catch up or maybe there's a problem?
Yeah, so I mean, I think what's true is that most parents know their child better than anybody. And so your sneaking suspicion or your intuition that something is off is a great time to start whenever that is. So like I've spoken with a lot of families who have said, I knew when they were 4 or 5 years old. I just
Okay.
knew something inside of me told me that something was wrong, and I think it can be easier to tell if you have other typically developing children that are older, and then you realize that, like, "Oh, wait a second, this is different." But you don't always have that, but it's true that for most mama bears especially, like, you just know that something is off. So anytime that you feel that, I would encourage you to dig a little deeper to see if your suspicions are correct. The
Yeah,
sooner you
mama
can
guts are
get your head
powerful,
around.
right?
It is.
Mama guts are powerful. So, in terms of, and we've talked about this before, seeking diagnosis or not, I know that
Yeah.
for seeking an official diagnosis can be quite costly, especially for somebody who's homeschooling. But how do we, like, should we go about that, or how do we kind of go about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So sometimes the diagnosis is valuable if you need to get additional accommodations or support. So let's just say at some point you want to take the ACT and you want to have extended time, or you want accommodations to have part of that test read to you because you feel like that might affect your score. You actually have to have that documentation in order for them to permit that. So in those cases, having an official document or a diagnosis can be really, really powerful. But if you're just, looking for the confirmation to say, do I actually have this, yes or no? I think that's more of a personal preference. You don't have to be diagnosed to start doing something about it. It's more of, is that going to be helpful for you, yes or no?
Yeah, I love that. And I think it a lot of times for some of us moms, it's like, oh, okay, there is something going on. That's not just me thinking like, I'm not overthinking it, or I'm not, it allows you to not beat yourself up so much about it
For
too.
sure.
So,
For sure.
but definitely it doesn't matter. I mean, we didn't even investigate with my son. I was just something that we were like, okay, let's work a little differently here and let's
Yeah.
see, how that works out. So, and it took a
Yeah.
little longer and that's okay, but right now he's totally jamming and so
Cool.
that's, that works out sometimes too. So what are some of the ways I know for my son, one of the things was it was like, oh my gosh, the spelling was like he was a
Yeah.
voracious reader, but like the
Oh,
spelling, it blew my mind. Like, how can somebody read this amazing? And then I say, okay, what's the sound? He's like, I. I'm like, oh, you're
yeah.
killing me. You're killing me.
Yeah.
So, as an English teacher, I'm like, why? But I was like, "Okay, okay, let's figure this out. Let's step back. Let's do a little reset in this area and let's come
Mhm.
back. Let's rebuild his confidence in that area." So, how do we start helping our kids? Like what are some of the strategies that we can do?
Yeah, so I mean, I think step one is to just figure out, is that what you're dealing with? Do you have a reluctant reader, or do you have a reader that is really, really struggling to hear and respond to language?
Good
Because it
distinction.
is one of those things that reading more is not going to fix. So if just I think sometimes people think like, oh, I'm not doing it good enough. If I just do it more, or if I do a better job, then somehow it will overcome itself. But if you're going to truly reorganize how the brain is hearing and responding to language, that is an explicit thing, that is a repetitive thing that has to happen day after day after day in order to get things reorganized. So I think, just kind of figuring out, is this just, the type of material that I'm giving my child to read is not interesting to them, and that's why we're having some issues. I think it's also important to know that before the age of 7, reversals can be common. Like, it's developmentally normal to reverse B's and D's and to flip numbers back and forth before the age of 7. After 7, not so much, but that can happen, and I think it can really freak a lot of parents out to say, okay, I'm seeing a few backward letters. Does that mean my child's dyslexic? No, not necessarily. So you're kind of looking for the weight of the evidence, but really kind of coming back to that, is that really what I'm dealing with or not? And if it is, then kind of working that explicit, the neuron works by repeatedly hitting that area over and over again every single day. So it's kind of targeting that, repeating the work every day in an explicit way, and then you can reap the benefits of the change neurologically from that.
I love that you say that, yeah, it's a habit, right? So we're
Right.
reformulating those synapses, right? We're making new habits in the brain. And so I absolutely love that because that's just success in life anyway. But
Right.
that's how we create habits and everything. But that it's all about really being intentional. And you guys know how I am about intentionality. It's super important. So being intentional, I know one of the things that we did was I used to do it. I started writing with him. So we
Cool.
took a break for a while and then I started writing with him and for him. So I'd start writing for him and he would start to see how things were. And then we did typing, we did all kinds of things that kind of just help reinforce that. We didn't pile it on though. We just did a little bit over time, a little bit over time, a little bit over time. And then it's finally started to click in. So I love that you're saying do little things that you're not saying like, okay, quit everything else and come back in.
Yeah, so I mean, I think what's true is that a lot of the families that we work with come from very diverse backgrounds. We have a lot of families that homeschool, but we've got also clients that are in private school, clients that are in public school, and we can't ever control what they're doing alongside of the work in the program. But you could absolutely continue to do whatever else that you were doing. And it's just being really, really intentional about getting sight and sound and all of those neurological pieces to reconnect. And then, you can kind of see things take off. And that's the funnest part is to see a child who didn't have confidence in writing or spelling, or a child who didn't feel good about their reading capacity suddenly realize that, like, wow, I totally can do this. And the sky's the limit for me.
For sure. That was the most amazing thing for me in this last couple years because he's always really disliked writing just because he's perfectionist
Oh,
also, but then that spelling thing. And
cool.
then he comes in this last year and he says, "Hey, I just read this article and Rutsch's video about AI and what it's going to do in the future. I have a lot of ideas about that. Do you think I could write my own article?" And I'm like, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Let's scrap everything. You just focus on that. And he wrote and wrote and wrote for 5 hours. It was so amazing.
Wow.
And it was so incredible. And he asked to write things. He's writing a book. He's writing, I mean, it's
Good for
just so
him.
incredible to see that.
Yeah,
And then, but I love also that, it's very much about me being patient too. I had to be very patient, which is hard coming from an English teacher who thinks, "Oh
I
my gosh,
get
he's
it.
not writing." So
Yeah.
what do you think in terms of how you structure your program? Because your program is, like you said, for all kids because they don't get served in public schools. So how do you structure your program in a way where do you give them do you have classes or do you give them,
Yeah.
homework and things to do? How do you structure that?
Yeah, so we do all of this work within 4 months. So I think sometimes clients that have worked in tutoring or they've done other programs have found that it was a several year journey and they were making minimal, if any, progress. And so what's powerful is that when you teach the brain to respond, it can respond really, really quickly as long as you're being consistent with it. So what we ask is that families are willing to carve out 10 to 15 minutes a day. For most families, they're like, cool, because I'm doing that times 5 already. So it's just an online format, and it'll walk you through all 8 of the modules that will take you step by step through how to reorganize how the brain is hearing and responding to language. But when clients finish the course, they're able to decode everything we put in front of them. We're able to get them to spell by sound 100% of the time. They still have a little bit of work on some of the advanced patterns with long vowels and some of the R controlled vowels where you have to do a little bit more repetition and practice explicitly, but the way in which their brain is hearing and responding to that has resolved. And so it's just powerful to know that that can happen in a short interval of time. It doesn't have to be a lifelong struggle. It doesn't have to be years and years. You can totally be anywhere in the world. So we have clients all across the US. We do have clients in Australia and South Africa. So it's portable. Like you can do this from anywhere, um, but it's a blip in the grand scheme of things.
That's so huge. You guys, 4 months is like nothing. That's
It's
so amazing.
nothing.
And to have that total transformation of just feeling very powerless to start and then just feeling completely confident and knowing that, you got this from straightforward. That's so incredible. I love that. And I know you do have a higher level, like where you kind of ongoing sort of helps as well, right?
Yeah, so, the clients that we work with, especially if they were a homeschooling family, they will say, "Oh, we don't want to lose this community and the support." And, because we've got mindset coaches as part of the team and they love that piece of it. And so there is a next level. So what's true for most children with dyslexia is they are average or above average intelligence. So it's fun to really help them to learn their strengths, their superpowers, so that they can grow into these awesome entrepreneurs, these super, engineers. There's a ton of gift in the dyslexic brain. And so it's really helping to optimize. So we do have a functional medicine practitioner on our team, and we're learning about how to match the gut to the brain because, gosh, those things matter. And so those clients are kind of diving in at a totally different level to get their child to like, whoa, we're dealing with a little genius here, and let's help them to grow into that superpower.
I'm down for that. Like, I love that. And you guys all be presenting to that group later on. I think it's later on this month actually.
Uh-huh.
So in a couple weeks. So I'm super excited about that. That is where and really so the course is really just taking you from confident to like, okay, we got this. And
Uh-huh.
then but long term, I think that that's really powerful is to engage that special part because whenever you have something a different kind of brain thing happening, they can access totally different parts of the brain than we
Uh-huh.
can. And so that's super awesome. There's so much genius there, like you said. And what a beautiful experience, I think, to be able to continue and have that community where they're feeling like, hey, I'm not on the outs. I'm not totally different. Like this is everything.
Yeah.
Everybody's, got something going on. We're actually pretty cool.
Very, very cool. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you were to look at some of the most successful people in the world, you look deep enough, and a lot of them have dyslexia.
I love that. We were talking the same thing to another I think what Dr. Gianna Wesett and I talked about that too, is that really the way that their brains thought differently and the way that they could take apart things differently was so much out of the box.
Mhm.
And it allowed them to really move society and move, science and whatever in a play art in a place where it wouldn't
Mhm.
normally be able to go. So I'm loving this hope. I'm loving this energy. I'm loving that, we're looking at our kids in such a different way and that we allow it's not a disability in the fact that they're going to be struggling for life kind of thing that we can actually help them and then access that genius into
Yeah.
a way that you guys know I'm about creating leaders that move this train in our future forward in a way that produces betterness, right? It's for everyone. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I
absolutely.
know
I mean,
that's yeah, go ahead.
no, I just, sometimes they get it's such a challenge for self-esteem and self-identity because I get labeled as this thing and it's seen as so negative. And yeah, we do have some work to do there, but there's also these tremendous gifts, and to make sure that the ego doesn't get squashed, that we can't even allow this person to be their best self. So it's really kind of helping them to step into that, I guess.
Yeah, and I love it too because everybody's got something going on.
Uh-huh.
Everybody has something. So
Oh, for
it's
sure.
just your thing. That's what I tell my son. He's a severe dairy allergy. And I was like, look, everybody has something, some kind of struggle, some kind of something they have to deal with in their life. If this is all you got, then hallelujah, right? So, like, that's a beautiful thing. And now that we have Dr. Rebecca and we have retrained the dyslexic brain, and there's more stuff coming out more and more about dyslexia, which
Mhm.
is very, very cool that we have something that empowers us to be able to make that difference and we don't have a we're not producing adults anymore that it will say well I'm just I don't read because I have dyslexia. Like
Mhm.
that's something we don't have to deal with anymore, which is so amazing. So Dr. Rebecca, can you please tell us how we get a hold of you, how we get in
Yeah.
touch with you, and I'm super excited for this program.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for that. I think the easiest way to find us is if you go to drrebeccatroy.com. You've got access to connect with us in a number of different ways. So there's links to all of our different social media platforms. Every other week in our Facebook group, we are celebrating another case study, which is just like more proof of like what is possible. So when you see it in a real human life and all of the cool things that they were able to obtain as a result of doing the work, it's just so powerful. But the other thing that I think is maybe helpful for you is at the top, we've got a link to a screener. So I know that it can be true that you can pay several $1,000s to go get a neuropsych evaluation. You can have to be on a wait list for 6 months to a year to sometimes even get that. This is an automated thing that will give you like a percentile range. Your kids between the 10th and the 20th percentile, your kids between the 5th and the 10th percentile. And so when you start to add up those pieces of evidence, it can give you enough to say, I'm either concerned or I'm not concerned. No, it's not an official diagnosis, but it's going to give you some really good data. And it's a very easy way to start. So if you're curious about that and you've had this nagging feeling in your heart, Mama, I'm going to tell you that you're almost always right. And so you can confirm it with that assessment if you're curious.
That's so powerful, you guys. So it's really important for us to just take an assessment of where we're at. And then that's something you can use, over and over again. If you're thinking like, okay, my kid's really young, let's just kind of see, and then let's wait a little bit
Sure.
and then let's see again. I think that's huge. It's so powerful, so empowering. I absolutely love it. You guys, these links are going to be in the comments and in the podcast description. So make sure that you look at all that. It's also in YouTube in the description. So make sure you get in touch with Rebecca. If you have any questions for her,
Sure.
definitely put them in the comments. Definitely email her or get in touch with her on her Facebook page or her which I've also linked everywhere as well. So you definitely, you guys, get in touch with her, ask questions because she's so phenomenally just knowledgeable about every single aspect of this. I'm just super excited. So
Thank
thank you
you.
so much, Dr. Rebecca, for joining us today. And we
Anytime.
will definitely keep in touch and with you on here and definitely have some, if people have questions, we'll definitely have you back on.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I appreciate what you sharing your time with us today. And
You
we
got
look
it.
forward to talking to you again soon.
You got it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, you guys. Talk to you again next week, next Thursday. Bye bye.